Before we get into the video, I'd like to remind you that the release date for the first ever Challenger Series decks, Cowboy Bebop and Trigun Stampede, is the 19th of January. The UniVersus roster is growing, with Cowboy Bebop returning with Spike Spiegel and Faye Valentine, and Trigun Stampede bringing Vash the Stampede and Nicholas D. Wolfwood. A quick spoiler warning that the cards contain stills from the show and there may be some show content discussion. Check with your local store to pre-order or pick up on release dates. UVS Games are also running a launch event from January 19th to February 18th where you can earn yourself loyalty points, formerly known as redemption points, by playing as one of the 4 Cowboy Bebop and Trigun Stampede characters, and additional bonus points if you play all 4 during the span of the launch event. Check the link in the description for more details. If you don't already have a UGN account, when signing up, if you click the drop down for How Did You Hear About Us and click Content Creator, you can enter our name, the Daubers, and your account should be credited with 50 loyalty points. Thank you so much UVS Games for sending over this product to unbox.
Similar to the video we done yesterday for Spike, today we're going to be having a look at 5 different deck ideas for Vash. The same disclaimers apply. Don't take these to any major events unless you've tested thoroughly beforehand and you're happy with them. We're not including SRs again because despite Fiery Vengeance working really well in some of these decks, not everybody has access to SRs just due to the low pull rate. With this first deck, we wanted to build upon the themes that the Challenger Series deck had already put in place, namely the discard pile mattering and us wanting to keep an attack on top of it so we can generate additional bonuses. Out of our 22 attacks, the majority of them care if it's an attack on top of a discard pile and can give us a wide variety of bonuses if so. The majority of them will have at least 2 chances to find an attack on top of the discard, one from being played and one from Vash's mill ability, but a few of them have additional ways to either mill additional cards or to rearrange the discard pile itself. Intimidating Charge will increase its own speed and give us a way that we might see our next check. Nimble Maneuver allows us to stack a card from our discard pile back on top of our deck to help with checks. Sure Shot can cause a 4 life point swing, which can be really useful. Knee Smash is either drawing us a card or allowing us to build, and it's not unlikely that it will be able to do both. Flashfire Fist mills 4 cards to generate its own damage, and remember when you're milling more than 1 card at a time, you actually get to rearrange the order that they hit the discard pile. And then lastly we have Nebulous Stare that can put an attack from the discard pile on top of it, and then if it only shares 1 symbol with Vash, we get a further 2 damage. In addition to having a bonus on some attacks if the top card of the discard pile is an attack, we also have 11 cards in the deck that care about entering the discard pile during the enhance phase. We have 4 copies of Avoiding the Conflict. This either gives +2 damage or -2 speed, and it also has an enhance that allows us to return it to the deck and draw a card to replace it. We have 4 copies of Public Support. When this enters the discard pile, our attack gets +1 speed and +1 damage. Though we can always just use the enhance ability on it to destroy it, get to look at the next card in our deck, and then we may discard a card and draw a card. So even if we don't mill Public Support, its own enhance will allow it to hit the discard pile. And lastly, we've got 3 copies of Caring Mentor. When this hits the discard pile, we get to remove it and then we can see what the next check is. To try and help us guarantee that we're always going to have an attack on top of our deck, we've also included some other ways that we can manipulate a discard pile or mill additional cards. So we have 3 copies of Get the Scoop, which will allow us to see the next check and then we can discard the card if we want, meaning that we can always flip it and if it's an attack, we can bin it. 4 copies of Pitching In, which will just allow us to straight rearrange our discard pile and put an attack on top. 3 copies of Revel in his Masterpiece for passive +1 damage, while also milling us a card each time. And 2 copies of Reward Director, which will help us on progressive, but it also guarantees that we're checking an attack, while making that check +2. For the other cards in the deck, we have 1 copy of Interdimensional Plants, E-Commit, destroy a foundation that we don't need anymore, get to draw a card and +1 to our next check. The foundation could even be a Nebulous Stare that we've built, which will furthermore turn on all these cards that care about having an attack on top of the discard pile. Also it's enhanced to spend 1 momentum for +3 damage and gain a health back. Not only puts an attack in the bin, but generates additional damage for our attacks. 3 copies of You're Finished. While we're not guaranteed to draw a card off it, it's a low block 0 diff spam, and it also has a deadlock E that could be quite helpful. Since we're going to be milling so much, there's a chance that eventually we might cycle, especially if the game's going a little bit long. At this point it turns on all the copies of Firestarter that we're playing. We've got 2 copies of Hatsumi's Design for speed hit, 4 Seeing It All, which should make sense, 2 Suspended Bounty, 1 copy of Spooky, 3 copies of Fashion Icon to round out our speed hit in the deck, 1 copy of Bebop Blues because not only does it say you're definitely going to find an attack, it gives a chance that we might trigger some of the non-attacks that care about hitting the discard pile. And then for the sideboard, got 4 copies of Hellflame Javelin, mostly here for the enhance that allows us to commit a combination of 2 foundations or assets, 3 copies of Pass Through Walls for more anti-asset and some breaker tech, and 3 copies of Vash Strength for problem attacks. While the sideboard could be a little bit more diverse, I'm really keen to get this deck to the table and see how well we can make this discard pile matters theme work. One of the few cards Emma's never got around to building with is Cannon Blast, so when I asked her what she would do with Vash, this is the first thing that came to mind. It's a deck that can make great use out of the fact that Vash can easily give all attacks plus 2 speed, meaning that even something as simple as a Meteor Shower is now coming in 6 speed high. Eventually your opponent needs to make a decision between blocking these cards that can be recurred in future turns, or blocking haymakers like Home Run Comet and Cannon Blast, with the rest of the attack pieces being here to cause disruption in one way or another. Meteor Shower actually has a little bit of interesting synergy with Vash, since as soon as we've got 1 face up momentum, we always theoretically have that 1 attack that we need to pay for Vash's ability. We can just discard any non-attack card that we have in hand to add the Meteor Shower to hand, then trigger the enhanced commit. Just like most other Cannon Blast decks, we're also running Friends of Animals, just so if this isn't the only situation where we might be committing Friend of Animals, since we're also playing 2 copies of Staying Awake, which means we can commit it to give any one of our high attacks plus 3 speed plus 1 damage. As you'd expect of a deck running Friend of Animals, we're also playing Command Pigeon Flocks to help build it, with 2 other ally foundations in the deck, Well Pussycats and Ryuku's Training Agency. We have 2 copies of the Futures now, so we're able to throw Cannon Blasts or Home Run Comets deep into the turn, a copy of Airy for survivability, and 2 copies of Interdimensional Plants, as this card's becoming a bit of a standout from the Vash deck for myself. Foundation wise, you might see a lot of cards that appeared yesterday when we were talking about Spike videos, but that's because they're pretty good. We've got 3 copies of Syndicate Target, 2 copies of Keeping Enemies Safe for stun hate, 2 copies of Floating Around My Baby for additional damage, 2 Release, 2 copies of Hatsumi's Design, 3 copies of High Value Target and 2 Self-Sacrifice, providing low blocks with useful abilities, 2 copies of Grasping for Answers because Cannon Blast is ranged and reducing the difficulty of this card we want to play late on is going to be beneficial, 3 Suspended Bounty for more speed hit, 2 copies of each Finally Awake, Well Pussycats and Ryuku's Training Agency, 1 of each in a couple of useful foundations, Incredible Display for cancelling responses and allowing us to get back our block, Vast Strength for dealing with problem attacks, Monstrous Ferocity so that we've always got a mid block on hand till we use it, and Levitate to allow us to dig for a block if we absolutely need to, 2 new training methods for smoothing out builds, and 1 copy of Sing For Me for some life gain and additional ways to draw cards. We also have 1 copy of Face Shield in the main with extra in the side, 1 Passing the Torch, 3 copies of Friends of Animals, and 1 copy of Blood Evaluation for another way to draw and ready itself up, allowing us to go later in the turn. In the sideboard we see another copy of Airy, 2 more Vast Strengths, 3 more Face Shields, 2 Lost and Fought for dealing with problem foundations, and 2 copies of Evading Copy for other decks that are looking to make their speed exceptionally fast. The decision to make the attack lineup fully highs is so there's a chance that you will erode your opponent's block zones before you finally drop some devastating Cannon Blasts or Home Run Comets. I know Emma will be putting this one together to try it with locals very soon, so maybe she'll come on and give you some feedback about what she thought. Unlike deck 1, this one will lose quite a few cards to rotation when it comes. Not only do we lose 10 of our attacks, we also lose Self-Sac, Release and Passing the Torch. While I don't think this will be the death knell for the deck, I just believe it might cause you to take it in a little bit of a different direction if you want to continue running Cannon Blast. I would definitely start by increasing the number of copies of Rewind Throttle, and then maybe look at working in some Nedry support like Wave and Spiral Blasts to replace the Ochako cards that are going to be dropped. Taking the all build in a different direction here, we've decided to focus on punches instead of trying to manipulate the top card or discard pile. With it being a punch deck, the usual suspects are here, with Valiant Assault, Better Than Enemy and Texas Smash taking centre light. We're also running 4 copies of Hardened Uppercut, not only for the defensive ability when we block with it, but it turns out plus 4 damage on an attack that we can make 5 speed low is pretty good. And 2 copies of Carolina Smash is a cheeky poke that's got Breaker. Since we're based on punches this time, we're able to make good use out of To the Rescue to deal with problem foundations on our opponent's side. Pull no punches will also help us maintain more progressive while generating some momentum. And we get that little bit extra out of You're So Obvious when we're able to increase our own stats with it. This time we're only running 10 cards that care about hitting the discard pile, but that's more of a circumstantial benefit instead of the game plan of this deck. We have 4 Avoiding Conflict returning, 3 Caring Mental, and going down to 3 copies of Public Support. For the rest of the cards in the deck, we see Interdimensional Plants returning, and at this point I'm sure that it appears in all 5 of these builds. 2 copies of Floating Around My Babies for additional damage. It can't be fixed, so Stun and Hate. Get a Scoop to ensure that we're able to pass our checks. 2 Celebrity Status as we have a couple of ways to draw cards in the deck. 3 copies of Daunting Message for selective stun on our opponent's side. 3 Hatchme for speed hit. A copy of Night Watch, since we are playing actions on the main board, there's a good chance that this will just act like an on-board revoke and be able to cancel and enhance when we need it to. Not to mention the Deadlock form can be pretty disgusting if we're able to pick up a Texas Smash. A copy of Spooky. 2 Fashion Icon. 3 copies of Specialist Sound. 2 copies of You're So Obvious for dealing with big damage attacks. 2 Patient Observation for more speed hit, bonus points for being a low block with Breaker. And the last card we haven't touched on is 2 copies of Award Director. Yet again, just being able to clear progressive with it is going to prove useful in the long run. As for the sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Nullify we can bring in just for more enhanced cancels, and in addition to that we've got another copy of Night Watch, 1 more You're So Obvious, 2 more To the Rescue, 2 Vash Strength for dealing with problematic attacks, and 2 Phase Through for dealing with assets and Breaker. In terms of what it will look like post rotation, we lose Texas Smash, which is where our main damage is, but we can always bring in stuff like Final Smash to replace it. Also puts a little bit less strain on actually having to combo the attack. Foundation wise, we do lose quite a bit with like Can't Be Fixed, Celebrity Status, Specialist to Sound, You're So Obvious, and Pull No Punches. But I'm sure there'll be other foundations that can fill this gap, even bringing stuff like Fast Hybrid or Phase Through into the main board. On to deck 4, and this one's also based on a singular attack that we want to be thrown quite late into the turn for the most value. Focused attack's already an impressive 6 speed mid, but thanks to Vash we can make that 8 speed. Plus with the rest of the attack lineup also being based around mid, with a couple of ways to commit foundations on our opponent's side, or even turn off defensive pieces, hopefully we're able to make this focus attack make quite an impact. So starting off with our assets, we see 2 returning faces here with Airy and Interdimensional Plants. I think I'm currently in love with Interdimensional Plants because I seem to be putting it in all the decks that I can. And also, is there anything better than just hiding behind a small child for defense? Onto the attacks, we've got Spiral Wave Surge, which for the low price of 1 health and milling 1 card off top of our deck, this becomes a 4 difficulty 6 mid for 6. Not only that, we also get a bonus to our next check if our opponent blocks it. That's not the only Nedry attack we're running, because we've also got Nedry Wave. It's going to be 6 mid for 4, plus additional damage for each time our opponent's blocked this turn, so this damage can scale quite well. Also, if it's a little bit later in the game and we already have momentum, it effectively says stun free on play. You got to talk late in the game, and especially having momentum, we have 4 copies of Piercing Needle. Not only will it have Deadlock stun free in the late game, but early game we can make it an 8 speed for 3 damage attack to guarantee that we'll have some momentum. It's probably for the best that Back Alley Haymaker was banned, so right now we're playing Build Your Own Back Alley with Wind Up Punch. Since Vash is all but guaranteed to be able to commit himself, discard an attack and draw 3, that will meet the requirement of having discarded a card to generate stun 2 for Wind Up Punch. Not only this, but after a few turns it becomes easier to play and increases its own damage. Not to mention the fact the attack is powerful free. And lastly, we have 2 copies of Rejuvenating Smash here. It's going to be useful on defense, but also on offense we can always commit Vash during the attack, discarding a card and being able to generate the top card of our deck as momentum, to pay for Nedry Wave or even Wind Up Punches powerful free. Realised I completely brushed over focused attack there, but we kind of touched on it in the intro. It's the main focus point in the deck. It's going to care about how many mids are in your card pool, so you want to be going quite deep in your turn with it. And the deadlock ability is nothing to laugh at either, being able to selectively commit 3 foundations and getting a damage bonus equal to their combined difficulty. With the foundations, we see a lot of cards from other decks reappearing, with 4 syndicate target. Life may also get this card, Denki playing the guitar, surprising skill. 2 keeping Eri safe, 4 Hatsumi for repeatable -2 speed, and 3 I'll protect you for when we really need that -3 speed. 4 copies of high value target, 4 suspended bounty for more speed hit, 1 Infamy and 1 incredible display. 2 Lost in Thought for another way to deal with problem foundations. 3 new training method to help smooth out builds. 2 Faith Shield for keeping us alive. A Levitate so we can dig for additional blocks or filter when we block. 2 to the Rescue for another way to deal with problem foundations. 2 copies of Without Limits so that if we absolutely need to, we can make any of the attacks in the deck with the exception of Piercing Needle easier to play. 1 Monstrous Ferocity for that mid block on demand. And 2 copies of Leaving the Bebop just so we can guarantee draw an attack. Sideboard is pretty straightforward as well, an additional copy of Eri, 2 more copies of Rejuvenating Smash to bring it up to a full playset if we think the game's going to go long, 1 more Lost in Thought, 1 more Face Shield, 2 more copies of To the Rescue if we're facing a lot of interaction, and 2 Vash Strength just to deal with the problem attacks as the previous decks. In terms of rotation, this deck's actually rotation proof, so nothing in this will leave the game when UU drops. If anything, it might just get a bit better. Just like yesterday's deck 5, this is the one I'm most excited to get to the table. All the attacks in the deck, in one way or another, will allow us to selectively kill a rival's foundation. Now it's worth noting a few of these require the attack to connect, but hopefully Vash's +2 speed on face will help that happen. We have 4 copies of Throwing Knife Lunge. It's a nice simple attack, it's 3 mid for free, so we make it 5 mid for free, and then its own ability will cause life loss as well, so it should be coming in 5 mid 4. It's worth noting this is a card pool ability that will trigger off of weapon attacks, whereas not all the attacks in our deck are weapon, but we do have a few. It also has an enhance in the card pool. If our rivals lost 5 or more health this turn, we can destroy 1 rival, asset or foundation. So this means if our first attack connects, we can play this as a second attack, maybe get in for some damage, and then when we play the third attack we can flip this one to kill another rival foundation. It is worth noting if the first attack connects, you could just play this as a 5 and then likely trigger the enhance right then, giving up on the chance to do some damage, but it gives you a second targeted removal. Up next we have the newest attack in the deck, Punisher's Beam. It's 4 high for 5 damage attack with Breaker 2, and it could also generate some momentum if we get lucky with this top enhance, but that's not the main reason we're playing it here. All this attack has to do is damage, and then we get to destroy a target foundation of our choice. Following on from that, we've got Blue Flame Spiral. At this low cost of readying 2 of our rivals' foundations, we can make this a 7 mid attack, which Vash will push to a 9 mid. And same again, if it deals damage, we get to destroy a rival foundation or asset. A little bit more restrictive with this next one, Flamethrower. Yet again, it can generate its own speed. We mill the top card of our deck and get speed equal to the difficulty of it. So if we hit an attack, we're getting a decent amount. Foundation wise, it can vary greatly. But this attack has to do 5 or more damage to be able to destroy a rival's foundation. It's also worth noting that it does have powerful 3, which gives us a way to close out the game. And lastly, we have a 6th death in the deck with Deadly Ambush. This can cause a 4 health point swing if it connects, and it's quite likely it will since we'll be making it an 8 low for 5 damage attack. While the destroy effect on this one isn't restricted by having to connect, it does only destroy committed foundations. Due to the high difficulties of the attacks in our deck, we're running 2 copies of Battle Arena to act as a foundation that can commit for 2. Also, the additional momentum generated can be spent on a couple of cards in the deck, including interdimensional plants, which also makes its return as a 2 of. Foundation wise, we've went with a lot of options that we can just throw out early as quickly as we can. So we've got 4 copies of Prideless Negotiations, nice simple spam with Breaker 1. 2 Surviving the Final for some cheap speed hit. 3 Syndicate target. 3 copies of Get a Scoop so we can see one next check. a copy of House of Cards so we can try and stack a 3 on top of our rival's deck, meaning that we'll definitely be able to get in. 3 copies of Snack Time for additional speed and stun. 2 copies of Struggling with Studies because defense isn't really what we're worried about initially, but it is nice to have some. 3 copies of Defying Fate, just for some additional speed hit. 3 copies of Red Riot's the Coolest for more damage. 2 copies of Suspended Bounty, yet again more speed hit in the deck. We're playing 4 copies of The Big Fall. Ideally, our opponent will never be in a situation where they've got to deadlock, so this will be a foundation we're just looking to trade 1 for 1. But even then, if we're able to keep them off their tempo, 1 for 1 will work out in their favour. 3 copies of League Interview. 3 copies of League Interview. 1 Spooky. 3 copies of Food. Yet again, more speed, hopefully making sure we connect. 2 copies of Prehensile Tail, so we should be able to recur the attacks that have connected. And 3 copies of League Invitation, so we can make it harder for our rival to block, and also selectively stun cards that we might want to block with Deadly Ambush. The sideboard brings in some much needed defense for the deck with 3 copies of Showdown, 2 copies of Fashion Icon, 2 copies of Facing Danger to reset damage down to 5, and 3 copies of Desperate Struggle so that we can reset either stat. Just like the previous deck, this one's also safe from rotation, so it'll be here to play with for a little bit, and who knows, maybe UU will make it more consistent. This will definitely be the first Vash deck that I'm building, and I actually think I'm playing it this weekend, maybe. I might mix it up a little bit so my locals don't exactly know what deck I'm bringing, and they can't like play all the anti-foundation destruction in the world. We'll see. Cool, that is us. Let us know if you'd end up building any of these decks and trying them out yourself. If you've got any alternative ideas for the characters, maybe give us a shout, we can have a look at them. If you enjoyed this style of video, let me know. Maybe we'll say about doing the Faye and Nicholas deck techs in the same way, where we'll just go over a couple of ideas instead of focusing on one deck. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!